Chapter 6. The black marble halls of Arcadia's royal palace proved a stark contrast to the vibrant soapstone of Dalmascus. Gabranth had never felt at home in such places, and found the palace no better than the depths of Nalbina without Monty's laughter echoing through it, but a royal summons could not be ignored, and at the very least, it got him away from Vane for a few days. The aged leader of the Arcadian Empire had since the first day of his rule been practical but hardline, keeping with an expansionist doctrine and sometimes using excessive force to achieve his goals. However, ever since Monty's birth, he seemed to increasingly regret his past actions, to the point now that he ceased his march toward global mastery altogether. The people had begun to lose faith, thinking their nation's power to be dwindling with their rulers, and the Senate stood in discontentment, eager to finish off Bujerba and ready the final strike against Rosaria. Having already lost his homeland to the Emperor, Gabranth cared little whether or not he continued his conquest, but his nerves nevertheless shook him deeply, for these days Gramus only called for an audience with him when the younger prince was involved. Though he knew the most likely reason for the summons had to do with Monty's safety in Rabanastre, there remained a chance that Bosch's escape would come up, which could be disastrous considering he had lately grown to dread being reassigned even without the past as a factor. The Emperor was old and weak, and Drace outranked Gabranth. Should Monty be orphaned, Gabranth feared he may never see him again. Perhaps of greater secrecy than Monty's existence was his father's imminent death. In the past year, Gramus had fallen sick, and try as the royal physicians might, he simply did not recover. The illness would invariably claim him, it had come down to only a question of when, but the Senate remained ever future-oriented, focused purely on naming a successor. The Senate feared Vane, they called him capable, but peregrine. They preferred a young, fledgling emperor, but Gramus could not burden his Monty with such power. He insisted that the boy would never be revealed to the public, that he would not rule, that he would live as a noble and nothing more, but even he could see Lamont's talent for the family business, and the pressures of the Senate grew more and more acceptable with each passing day. Gabranth himself had no love for Vane, but he did not want to see Monty forced onto the throne, and furthermore, Monty so adored his brother that the judge could do him no harm, though Drace seemed to have grown past this sentiment as of late. But Gabranth knew better than to ask, and he knew his partner would only leave him in the dark for his own protection, and besides, his duty was to protect Monty, all else came second, if at all. If Monty was to rule, that was out of Gabranth's control. The Emperor welcomed him home, a gesture that still set a tremble in the Landesian's heart, and commenced the general inquiries pertaining to Vane's performance thus far and the reaction of the citizenry, eventually skirting over the topic of Dr. Sid's adventures at the Drockler Laboratories, which had of late garnered considerable interest in the nobles of Arcades. Gabranth reported what he could, what Monty had told him, making certain to point out the financial benefits of establishing an artificial magicite trade, as well as the open possibilities of nethicite, which he specified already powered half of the Western Armada with astonishing efficiency. The Western Armada, being Vane's former unit, held little interest for Gramus, but he did seem somewhat concerned with the origin of the lab's funding. Though Dr. Sid was an esteemed member of the nobility, it did not seem as though any single nobleman could toss around so much money on ventures with such minimal odds of success. Foreseeing this question, Gabranth went about explaining as politely as he could.
I have confirmed he receives funds from Lord Vane, but their methods of acquiring supplies are too well hidden at this point to be given any certain judgment. Drace feels that Bergen may know more, but we're still in dark where he is concerned. How could Vane continue this?
The Emperor asked dismally.
He and Judge Zecht were so close. So we all thought,
Gabranth answered with a nod.
He has likely been aiding Sid from the beginning. I'm afraid his agency in the fall of Nabudis is also certain, but with Zekt missing, the truth remains difficult to ascertain. Missing?
Gramis shook his head with a miserable smile.
If Zekt is not dead, he is surely in league with Vayne. After what befell Nabudis,
said Gabranth,
there is little reason to assume he still lives. And even so, such a thing speaks low on Vayne's part. I have gone 2 years with the hopes that Vayne knew nothing of Nabudis. Perhaps he didn't. His fleet aided the attack, but there is no proof he was involved with the Nethysite. Yet he funds Sid. Is that not proof enough?
He turned his gaze to the sunlight that filtered through the high windows, setting the imposing room alight in jewel tones as the day drew to its close.
The long, cold years have clouded my eyes,
he admitted quietly.
I cannot see my own son's heart.
Gabranth's tone briefly softened, though he knew with perhaps too much certainty that effective assurance remained ever and always above his skill.
Sire, it could very well be that Vayne supports the science program for Lamont's benefit. You know how he loves the lab. A possibility,
Gramis admitted,
but I nevertheless feel that there is no one left in this empire I might trust. What has left that impression?
Gabranth nearly choked, realizing the impropriety of questioning his master, but Gramis greeted the inquiry with a weak smirk.
Ah, that Landesian boldness! I'd all but forgotten its strength since the war. Apologies, my lord. Perhaps you might put it to use for me? I've received several questionable reports on Judge Geese over this past year, even Monty says his loyalty wanes. What do you think?
He cocked his head, painfully aware that such a gesture caused him to take on a puppy-like appearance when masked by the royal armor.
Highness! Are you asking me to gossip? No, Gabranth, I'm ordering you to gossip. It has been many years since Geese led my security, and I no longer know him as well as I once did. Lord Vayne works with him far more than I ever. I feel just as you do about Vayne. I am asking for your opinion, nothing more. I don't trust Geese with Monty. As for other matters, I cannot say.
He stepped up to the nearest window, studying the setting sun.
You would trust no one with Monty but yourself.
The judge nodded.
And Drace. And me. You're his father. But you don't trust me. Of course I trust you. Just not with Monty. Sire, please. Ah, do not worry.
He awarded him a small smile, though it quickly faded.
Your devotion is just as Drace described it, and just as I prefer it.
With this, he began to cough haggardly, and Gabranth stepped forward with clear hesitance.
My lord.
The Emperor waved a dismissive hand, and continued with a weak rasp.
Gabranth, I must be honest, I have often doubted your loyalty. Why? Your Excellency, I have pledged my life to. I am aware, but judges have fled before, and it remains fact that once in the past, I laid siege to your homeland. The Republic of Landis is long since gone,
Gabranth insisted, shaking his head.
My allegiance lies wholly with the Empire. Perhaps?
Gramis's voice grew a bit stronger.
But what of your brother? He did not accept us as you did, he fled to Nabratia. Did you never think to follow him? I follow his every move. We should have executed him long ago. Do you truly think so? I would do it myself.
The emperor pondered this for a moment, though Gabranth could not tell if he thought high or low of such a statement, and instead noticed to his own detriment that the glow of the sun's demise vivified the red carpet on which they stood.
So, you would kill even your own brother for the empire?
Gramis at last stated slowly.
Your ruthlessness is not without merit, but it must not become this way with Lamont. You must ensure that it does not.
Gabranth resisted cocking his head once more, it reminded him too greatly of Bosch.
Why would it? House Solidar has seen many tragedies in these recent years, 2 sons and 2 wives I have lost. But you have witnessed for yourself the joy that Monty has brought me, that he has brought us all.
A few more coughs interrupted him, grating on the timbre of his voice and leaving a subtle wheeze in their wake.
These halls had gone so long without laughter that I nearly forgot the sound of it. But the time draws near when Vane's jealousy should return. You believe he would be threatened by even a younger brother?
The judge asked.
He does not have to be threatened, said Gramis. He must merely feel that he is. The choice of who shall succeed me is mine to make, and I will make it when I sense that the time is right. Until then, Lamont's safety wavers. I now see that you are worthy of my trust, Gabranth. It is my wish that you remain in Lamont's cortege alongside Judge Drace. So then you ask me to be his sword?
He asked, withholding a sigh of relief.
To strike where he might not. Rather be his shield, said Gramis, and keep your close watch on Vane, his is the keenest blade of all.
Gabranth nodded.
I understand. I will be indebted to you for this. I could not bear to see my sons war with each other again.
And with this, the emperor was once again seized in a fit of coughs that echoed against the thick marble floors, sending the chill of incumbent death throughout the palace.